Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr,
business consultant.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr Business Consulting.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Nelson Mandela said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." Well, on today's episode, we talk about the courage of letting go, removing limits, why surrender is the most powerful thing you can do, secrets to manifesting your goals, and more. Our guest is a charismatic, visionary, and transformational teacher who for over 20 years has been inspiring audiences around the globe. He's the best-selling author of You Are the One and his latest book, The Magic of Surrender. Widely considered a next-generation leader in the field of personal development, his mission is simple: to awaken and inspire people across the planet to access inner freedom, live authentically, and fulfill their true life's purpose. He's been featured on Larry King Now, NPR, Dr. Drew, Fox and Friends, and many other media outlets. Please welcome the man who Inc. magazine calls the mindfulness guru billionaires go to for advice, Kute Blackson. Kute, it is so great to see you. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. So, Kute, let's jump right in. I would appreciate it if you would take us back to where your story begins. You did not have a typical upbringing, as many of us would call normal. And you were speaking in front of thousands of people at 8 years old. So share with us part of your backstory and what were some of the early experiences that you had that shaped who you are today?
Wow. Yeah, I think a lot of people say I didn't have a normal childhood. It felt normal to me because that's all I knew. And it didn't feel that extraordinary until I began to realize and share about it with my friends. And they looked at me like I was a bit crazy. But it felt very normal. And I think that was the fact that it felt normal was, I would say, what made it powerful, because I grew up without a sense of limits. What's possible? What our typical limitations are on what can happen. And so, my first memories as a young boy was seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor, and she picks up the sand that this man walks on and wipes it on her face and stands up. And week after week, I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear, and people stand up out of wheelchairs. The same man whose sand she picked up would look at a woman in the wheelchair and say, "Why are you in this wheelchair? You're not sick. Stand up." They would stand up, or someone would come in with crutches and say, "Hey, throw the crutches away," he would say, and they would be walking after they hadn't walked in 3, 4, 5 years. And so I grew up with this miraculous sense of possibilities. And this man was my father. He was considered the miracle man of Africa. He built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, hundreds of thousands of followers, built a huge church in London, 3,000 to 4,000 people every Sunday. And my journey began. My journey began when my father threw me in front of the audience and said, "Speak." And I started to speak, and words came out of my mouth, and my speaking career began. Had no idea what I was saying, but something emerged, and I became very curious about life and obsessed about trying to understand life. My father on his bookshelf had maybe 1,000 books, maybe 2,000 books. I remember his entire bookshelf in his office was full of books, and they were books on Eastern mysticism, Western mysticism, self-help, personal development, meditation. And so I became obsessed with trying to understand, what is life, and what's the purpose of life, and where do we go? Where do we come from? And who am I? And what am I? And, is the purpose of life? I grew up in an environment where in my father's church, people weren't that educated and didn't have very many resources, would be considered poor, many of them, and yet seemed to be fulfilled and happy. And I also got a scholarship to a school, paid no money, and went to a school where I grew up with some of the most successful families in the world, presidents' kids, prime ministers' kids. And yet they seemed to have every reason to be happy, but weren't happy and were miserable. So I began questioning, what's the purpose of life? Is it just to wake up, go to work, make money, start a business, get a car, get a big house, go on vacation, and then die? Like it didn't make sense to me when I would be around my friends and their families. Many of them were just so unhappy, and they were unhappy. Many of them were in boarding school and they were unhappy. And so this began a deep questioning. When I was 14 is when I was ordained as a minister, and I was given the mandate to take over my father's organization. And I was the successor. My entire life was planned out for me. All of these hopes and expectations of hundreds of thousands of people pinning their hopes on me. And my heart sank because I knew that this was not my path. I knew that this was not my destiny. I felt that my calling wasn't to take over my father's church or do it through or impact people through religion or the structure of a church. I just felt called to do it in a different way. But at that stage of my life, I was too afraid to speak my truth. Wow. I was too afraid because my fear was if I told my father, like my father didn't consult with me, he just announced it. And my fear was if I spoke to my father, I loved him, he was iconic, but we weren't close. He's old school, very old school. It's like my way or my way. Which one would you like to choose? And my fear was if I told him how I felt, if I spoke my truth, if I dared to be myself, that I would lose his love and I would be outcast and I'd be abandoned and I'd be alone. And like many of us, we let fear control us. We let fear hijack us from being who we are. The fear we often have as human beings is, if I dare to be who I am, if you know who I am, you won't love me. And so I said nothing and I went along with it. And for 4 years, did my best to serve the community, spoke on some Sundays. And there was always this internal gnawing in my being that this is not the right path. This is not true. And so when I turned 18, I went through a lot of conflict and turmoil and depression and questioning for 4 years. And when I turned 18 is when things became unbearable and undeniable, because I made a choice not to go to university. Now I had to make a decision. What do I do with my life? I felt this profound calling, like a soul calling to come to America. I felt this soul calling I wanted to go into this field of self-help because all of the authors I'd read about and studied as a teenager, they lived in the US, they lived in California, they lived in Louise Hay, Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Marianne Williams. They all lived in San Diego, at Los Angeles, maybe San Francisco. So I thought, I want to come here. And my soul was pulling me here. And it didn't make sense because I thought I have no college degree, no education, no nothing. Yet this is where I'm guided to go. And it was tough, it was tough because sometimes what your soul guides you to do doesn't make sense or isn't convenient, but it was strong. And I looked into my future. I saw that I could take the expected path that was already being handed to me on a platter. And I saw that if I take this path, I could be successful by everyone else's standards. But if I don't have myself, if I don't have my soul, if I don't have my integrity, what kind of success is that? And it was such a pain I felt, because I felt like I was committing a self-betrayal, a soul suicide. And that's when I knew what I had to do, which was confront my father, speak to him. At the ripe old age of 18, I had that conversation, and I had to make peace with letting him go and grieving the relationship, because I was sure that we would never have a relationship after this. And when I told him, whilst terrified, by the way, we didn't speak for 2 years. And that was really heartbreaking, really challenging. But I didn't have a choice if I wanted to be true to myself. I saw that if I begin lying now, to get love now, I'm going to have to keep that lie going for the rest of my life. And that pain was too much. And so when we spoke, and we didn't speak for what ended up being about 2 years, it was tremendously difficult, tremendously painful. And I felt so alone and abandoned by life and the universe. And cut a long story short, I ended up winning a green card in the the DV1 green card lottery. That enabled me to come to the US, 2 suitcases, 1 suitcase full of clothes, 1 suitcase full of self-help books, $800, and showed up with a dream, knowing literally not one person in Los Angeles, and following a dream, and went and found many of the teachers. And I really believe in my heart, and I've seen this over and over and over. I've demonstrated it, I've lived it, I've tested it, that if you follow your soul, if you follow your integrity, if you follow your truth, you don't compromise what's true in your internal guidance system, I believe that the universe supports you. It may not take you the route that you expect. You may not end up where you expect, but I always believe that you will end up in the right place, in the right time, in the right moment, so long as you're being true to yourself authentically. And so that's what I did. Came to the US, found teachers, found many of these mentors and authors for many years, studied with some of them, traveled, then ended up traveling. And that's really what shifted my life. I traveled to Israel, studied with rabbis, walked the Camino, 900 kilometers in northern Spain, traveled to Thailand, studied with monks, ended up in India, and had certain inner awakenings in India that really connected me to some of the answers to the questions that I wanted to, that I've been asking my whole life. And it was out of that inner freedom that I decided to come back to the US and start coaching people almost 20 years ago now. And it was one person came, and another person came, and one person led to the next person. And honestly, it just slowly but fast grew and evolved, and people started coming from around the world, and it just mushroomed and evolved and expanded, and led to small groups and large groups, and then best-selling books. So that's the short version of my story.
Well, it's a very powerful story and an amazing journey that continues today, clearly. I want to pull on a couple threads, and I want to go back for just a couple of moments. And first, as a child, you're groomed for something bigger. Your father's grooming you to take over his ministry, continue that legacy. What did you want to do? What did you want to be when you were a young child? I know you played soccer, but what was your vision for yourself very early on?
Yeah, I played soccer. You know, I honestly, I was a very empathetic kid. And so, yeah, I played soccer. Yeah, which kid doesn't want to be a soccer player, kind of, and in the UK at least. And I don't know how real that was as a calling. I love soccer, but all I knew as a kid, because I was very empathetic, I would feel people's pain very deeply. And there was a part of me that always wanted to alleviate people's suffering. And I didn't know what that would look like specifically, but that feeling people and feeling people's pain and wanting to alleviate their suffering was really, really clear. And so that's what I knew. Somehow, like, I'm here to be of service to people in some way, shape, or form. That much I knew. I didn't know the specifics. All I knew was when my father announced to the congregation, my son's taking over, it didn't feel right. You know, I wished it did. It just didn't feel right. And that's why I feel many times as human beings, we do certain things and we stay in relationships that we know aren't aligned, you know, and we know we're not in love anymore. We work jobs that we know we're compromising our integrity in some way. And we spend decades doing that, knowing that this is not the purpose for why we were born. And I think one of the things that I had to be really real with was what I really, really, really felt. I could have denied this feeling that something's off, but it was too strong. And I think one of the things that keeps us stuck as human beings from breaking free, from being happy, from being fulfilled. Like, I saw that you cannot be truly happy living someone else's life, being someone that you're not. And many times we try to fit ourselves into a box of what we think society wants us to be. And one of the things that keeps us stuck and blocked as human beings, I think, are all the ways that we lie to ourselves. As human beings, we lie. If we're really honest, we lie to ourselves. We've been conditioned, often unconsciously, to lie to ourselves. As children, we pretended to be who do I think dad wants me to be? And we were that. And so we ended up learning to betray parts of ourselves, to put on a role, a mask and persona, to be who we thought society and our caretakers wanted us to be. And then we became that person and betrayed parts of ourselves. We also learned as children to shut down, disconnect from the pain. Often there was some level of pain in our childhood. The pain that was going on around us, dad was crazy, mom and dad were fighting. They didn't meet our emotional needs in some way. And so we learned to shut down, disconnect, and lie, not be true to what we really felt out of survival, a survival mechanism. And we developed all sorts of survival mechanisms to not feel the real pain that was going on inside. And then we ended up developing a sense of survival mechanism that we took through our entire lives to not feel this pain ever again. So now we're not being true to what we really feel. So we were conditioned out of need to get validation, out of survival, to not be true to what we felt, to lie to ourselves about what's real. And so many times I have found that we don't even know that we're lying to ourselves. We're in denial and we don't even know that we're lying. We're just living what we've been conditioned to live. We're just living what we were told to live. We're just living whatever we've been living, and we don't know. And then we end up creating a life. And then many times we'll even create success. We'll even create a business. We'll even achieve a lot by the world standards, only to be left with this feeling of, why is it not fulfilling? Why am I dissatisfied? Why am I not happy? You know, I have so many billionaires and clients coming to me that they say, Kute, I have like literally $4 billion, $5 billion. I have everything by the world standards, but I'm not happy inside. I'm not fulfilled inside. I don't feel alive inside. I don't feel the meaning of the purpose for what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't even know. And so human beings, we lie to ourselves. And that is one of the things that keep us stuck. And so one of the questions, maybe I'll give folks 3 questions just to sit with around this, is ask yourself this. If you want to get, there is no transformation without truth. There is no transformation without truth. And so freedom, real freedom, isn't free. It requires the willingness to tell the truth and release and let go what is no longer aligned. And so what lies am I telling myself? Simple question, not always easy for just the reasons I shared because of our conditioning. What lies am I telling myself? To me, real truth will transform your life. Many of the things we meditate about, pray about, journal about, go to church about, will dissolve and resolve if we just start telling the truth to ourselves. Truth, for me, is real spirituality, is real spiritual practice, is real personal growth, is real therapy, is telling the truth. So what lies have I been telling myself? Many times we're afraid of telling the truth. I was afraid of telling the truth because I was afraid of the consequences. And so sometimes we're afraid of telling the truth or acknowledging what the truth that we know deep down is because we're afraid of the consequences and what will happen. So I tell people, take the pressure off of yourself of having to take action. Just take the pressure off. Because, oh shit, if I tell the truth that I'm not in love anymore, I might have to leave. If I tell the truth that I hate my job, I might have to leave. When you take the pressure off, because when that fear is there, we often start creating a whole bunch of confusion. Like, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm confused, when deep down we know that confusion is a sign of self-protection and resistance. But if you could take the pressure off and just say, you know what, I hate my job. I hate my job. And just feel that. You don't have to leave, but just feel that. Let that marinate. Let that begin a process inside. I'm no longer in love. I haven't been in love for 5 years. I'm not in love anymore. That's the truth. I've outgrown this. We're no longer like, this is what I really feel. You don't have to divorce. You don't have to leave, but just feel the truth and let that start a process inside. It begins a process inside. You can't go back. Just take your time. Feel it. What am I pretending to not know? And lastly, what is the cost of lying to myself? There is a price of lying to ourselves, a price of freedom, a price of aliveness, a price of joy. And when we lie to ourselves, we will often feel pain. The pain is a blessing. Pain is a gift. Pain is your friend. Pain is feedback that you're not being true, that there's something that needs your attention. But as human beings, when we feel pain, we numb it. We've been conditioned to numb it, to distract from it, to drink it away, sex it away, drug it away, shop it away, work it away, just so we don't feel the pain. But when we don't feel the pain and acknowledge that pain, we stay stuck. And so I think part of the process of transforming is acknowledging this pain that we feel as a necessary feedback that we're not living in alignment. There is pain. What is the pain? Feel the pain and let that burn. And that can begin a process of movement. That when we numb ourselves from the pain, we can end up doing the same thing for decades, for a lifetime, because we're just numbing the pain. When you stop numbing the pain and you feel it, you just feel it, it starts burning. That creates a movement, and that movement ends up creating action. And so really sit with, what lies am I telling myself and what truths do I need to acknowledge? That's the place people can start.
Well, your words are definitely resonating with me, and I know that they are resonating with our listeners as well. So for all of you that are watching and listening right now, this is a very powerful episode, and I would highly encourage you to take Kute's 3 questions, ask yourself these questions, spend time on this, ruminate, journal, write down your thoughts, write down whatever pours out of your heart on these 3 questions. But what an amazing exercise for us all to go through. It's certainly something that I'm going to work on myself. So thank you for sharing that. I'm curious if we can go back again for just a moment.
Sure.
Two things. Number one, what do you think, why do you think your father felt that you were ready at such a young age when he announced that you were going to be taking over? Why were you ready? Why did he feel that you were ready at that stage?
You know, him and I, we've never spoken about it, really. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know if he felt I was ready. I don't know if he felt I was ready. That's a nice way to think about it. Maybe he felt I was ready. I think he just had his own idea of what his vision for my life was. And I think he had his own idea of what he thought I was going to be and what he wanted me to be. And he put that on me in a certain way, is what I think, you know, with good intention. And this is why I say there are no shortage of people in your life, if you're not aware, if you're not present, if you're not careful, that will think they know what's best for you, that will think they know what you should be doing, who you should be, and what you can do, and what your goals should be, and what you can't do, and what's not possible for you. Many of the people that think they know what you should do and what's not possible for you have never done what you want to do. And this is why I say, if you have a dream for yourself, if you have a vision, trust that vision. Many times we go around and ask everyone else, what do you think? 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 And they may not understand. But the vision that you've been given has been given to you for a reason. It's not a conference call. It's your vision. It's your calling. It's your dream. It's a dream that has chosen you. That dream has chosen you for a reason, because you are the perfect person to fulfill that dream and the vision. We think we chose it. It chose us, because everything we've been through, our entire life trajectory, has perfectly been preparing us to fulfill that vision. That's what we have to realize. And so when we can trust that and say, you know what, this is a vision that's given to me. It must be here for a reason. Encoded in that vision or that dream or that goal that we all have is also the seed for its fulfillment. And that seed isn't activated. Even if we don't know, how am I going to do this business? How am I going to launch this thing? How am I going to create that idea? I've never been there before. Encoded in the dream is the seed for its fulfillment, and the potential within us isn't activated until we fully embrace it and say yes. When we say yes, that's when the inner resources become unleashed. And a true goal, a true vision, it should scare you a little bit. Because that true vision, business goal, idea you have, if it's a worthy one, here's how you know worthy goal is you will look at it and go, oh my God, it kind of scares me. How is that even going to happen? How will I even accomplish that? Because a real worthy goal will force you to expand beyond your current identity and comfort zone. And it will take you on an evolutionary journey of having to become more, grow more, evolve more, let go of the limiting beliefs, strategies, ideas that you've been holding on to. And it will force you to access parts of yourself and dig into parts of yourself that you haven't yet, that you don't even know is inside of you. That is a true worthy goal. If you see a goal and you're writing a goal down and you're like, yeah, this is easy, I can achieve this, no problem. Oh, I can launch that. I'm not saying don't do it, but you're probably playing too small. If you don't have some fear when you look at that business, that goal, that dream, and like, ooh, excitement, but like, how? I don't know if I can. You start questioning yourself. It should cause you to question your current sense of self and identity, because you have to go beyond that. That's how you know you're on the right track. And so don't let anyone else determine your life and your vision and think they know what's best for you. And I think my father thought he knew, and it just didn't feel right for me. It just didn't feel true for me. And I think at the end of the day, at the end of our lives, what we have to make peace with is we have to be willing to look into the mirror and be at peace with ourselves. And I knew that I couldn't look into the mirror and look myself in the eyes and be at peace with myself if I was living someone else's life. And that's what gave me the courage, you know. And many people won't understand what you're up to. They won't see what you're doing. They won't get it. They won't, and that may be a good sign, because if everyone gets it, it's too common, you know.
So true, so true. So let's talk about your mom for a moment. So your mother, obviously a blessed person in your life, someone who you were incredibly close with. During this time when you're struggling with identity, trying to determine what you want to do with your life, your father wants you to go in a certain direction. It didn't feel right. It wasn't aligned with who you knew you wanted to be or who you needed to be. How was your mother guiding you at this point? What type of conversations was she having? What wasn't she saying that you would have liked for her to say? Or, and not knowing the culture, would you have wanted anything to be different than it was?
Growing up, at that time, honestly, my mother was the only, and this has been a constant, to be honest. My mother has offered me constant unconditional love. Constant, unwavering. I have known unconditional love in this lifetime. I may not have known certain things, but unconditional love is something I can say I have known and I could die with because of my mother. No matter what, I remember when I first told my mother at age 14, my father announces to the congregation on a Sunday, my son's taking over. I look across the stage at my mother thinking she knows, and she just goes in front, like, you know, on stage. And so when I spoke to her that evening, I'm like, Mom, I you know, this doesn't feel right. And I had several conversations with my mother over the years, and all she said was, Kute, I support you no matter what you want. So long as you're being true to yourself, you have my support. And that honestly was the gist of it. So long as you are following what's true, I will support you. It's unconditional. And that really was a blessing. That was the greatest blessing she could have given me, is that I had her support, you know, and she supported me. My mother and I, we were so close, and it was kind of me and her growing up. She raised me. My dad was gone a lot. And so when I even decided I wanted to come to the US at the age of 18 and want a green card and all of these things, she still supported me. Like, a lot of times maybe mothers or parents might be like, no, don't go, stay close to home, guilt tripping. And when I think back now, it makes me very emotional to think she just let me go. Like this woman who, to be honest, growing up, I was her everything. You know, I was her lifeline. I was her emotional, you know, counselor. I was her life in a sense. And when it came time for me to leave at the age of 18, she set me free. Not 1 ounce, not 1 ounce of guilt, not 1 ounce of anything, just go. I remember, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. I remember the day that I was going to the airport and my father took me, which was a miracle in and of itself. And a really emotional day. And my mother says, I can't come to the airport. I just can't do it. I'm not going to go, which, you know, it was her way of saying it's going to be too much for her. But she waved as I left and my father took me and she didn't come, but she didn't stop me. She sent me on her way, on my way. And even when I got to America, she just, you know, I would call her on a payphone. I would call my mother because I had no money. I was in Venice Beach. This was in the time of collect call before phones. I would call her and she would deny it. And then she would call back because the number of the payphone would track and she would call back. This way she would know, hello, you know, Mrs. Blackson, this is, you know, blah, 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 calling. Would you accept the charge? No. She would click and then she would call back the payphone or call back whatever the number was. And that was our code. And she just supported me no matter what. You know, in the first couple of, you know, first few months, we didn't have a lot of money. I came to the US with $800 in my pocket, 2 suitcases. You know, she would send me a few $100s here, a few $100s there, and just help me survive. You know, so I'm indebted to my mother's unconditional love. I'm indebted to her unconditional, unwavering belief in me. It's been a blessing. Yeah.
Incredible. Well, you dedicate The Magic of Surrender, your second book, to your mother. And you write in that dedication, you taught me the real meaning of surrender, and your spirit lives on in my heart. What a beautiful thing. Your mother passed in 2017. You open the book telling a very touching story. And it becomes very clear that the premise of everything that you talk about in this book about finding the courage to let go are lessons that you learned from your mother.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about The Magic of Surrender. I'd love it if you would share with us 2 pieces of information. The first, what was the catalyst for writing the book? I don't want to make any assumptions. So number 1, what was the catalyst? But then number 2, why now? Why was now the right time to bring this book to life?
Yeah, the catalyst for writing the book, when my mother passed away, I knew there was a book inside of me. I knew there was like something seeking to emerge. This was not the book I thought I was going to write. Full disclosure. This was not the book I wanted to write. I had no idea this was the book. No idea. I thought there were going to be a bunch of other books. I wrote on a whiteboard, on a big wall, a bunch of fancy ideas of books I thought would sell, books I thought would be bestsellers, books I thought my audience would want, books I thought publishers would want. And I was trying to make something into something as a marketing thing, and none of those felt authentic. None of those felt true. And the only word that stood out for me that I wrote down of hundreds of different topics and titles was the word surrender. And that's when I thought, oh my gosh, that's the book. It scared me because I thought, surrender, like we run away from surrender. We need to surrender, but as human beings, you say the word surrender and it's a hot word that we want to avoid. And I thought, that book scares me. I'd much rather write something, you know, exciting and safe. But I knew this was the calling. It was like the time when I was 18, I knew I needed to come to America. That feeling, it was so clear. So when I had to drop my ego and surrender to the book that was seeking to be written. And the book came about also because you mentioned, because of my mother. When she was diagnosed with cancer, during that year, I got to be with her. And cut the story short, because people can read about it, there was a six months into her process. I was flying back and forth from LA to London to be with her. And 6 months into it, the doctor said, is there anything, the doctor said, there's nothing else we can do. You're going to die. So get your affairs in order in a nice way. And I looked my mother in the eyes and I said to her two things. Number one, are you afraid? And she said, no, I'm not afraid because I know I'm not this body. I know that this body is just a temporary vehicle for my soul. And I'm going to be guiding you from the other side. And then I asked my mother, is there anything I could do for you as your son? And I think this is where the seed and the catalyst of the book was planted. Is there anything I can do for you in your final days? And she looked at me, is there anything you need? And she looked at me and she said, no, there's nothing I need and there's nothing I want. All I want is what God wants for my life. I'm not attached. And I saw she wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was surrendered, like truly, truly surrendered to life. And in that surrender, she was free. And she was demonstrating it to me each moment of this. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She wasn't angry. She didn't feel like a victim. I mean, she was a very emotional person, but just calm and at peace. And I knew when I got the download for the surrender book that this was the right time. This was right before the pandemic. This was before the pandemic. I finished the book before the pandemic. Let's put it that way. So I had no idea of the timing, the perfect timing that the universe had in store for this book. I couldn't have timed it better. So people think, you wrote the book because of the pandemic. No, I finished the book months before the pandemic started. And so it felt like there was an intelligence, that was unfolding in my soul, in my journey. And I think that surrender is so important now because in the last 2 years, I feel as though we've been thrown into the unknown as a humanity, so much uncertainty. Everything we thought came into question. We thought we were in control, living life, 2020, here we go, boom, wait a second, what's going on? So I think as though we've been put into a global seminar on surrender. As a species, we are being initiated into a new way of being, which is being weaned off of the ego-based modality of controlling life and navigating life and manifesting life to a much more aligned way of living in harmony with our souls, in harmony with the flow, in harmony with life itself. That is really about living surrender. And I think I'm excited about the book and the book at this time because I feel as though there is a phase transition happening. And I feel as though the book can guide people and maybe reframe surrender in a way that people can be excited about. This, we have a misconception in our culture that surrender is giving up and waving the white flag, that surrender is weak, that it's passive, that you're going to be a victim, a doormat. If you surrender, that you won't manifest your goals, your dreams, or your desires, that you're going to get less than. And what I want people to get is that what if you didn't get less, but you got more? Like more joy, more abundance, what if you got more than you could even have predicted, projected, strategized with your mind? You got more, maybe not what you expect, but more amazing. And so I think in so many ways with the ego and with the mind and with the old way of creating, we don't even know that we've been so attached to an outcome, so attached to the life that we thought, so attached to what we want that we have ended up limiting life's magic, limiting life's intelligence. And so to surrender is to let go of control, or the control that we thought that we had. Control is the master addiction. Surrender is to stop trying to force and manipulate life to fit your limited idea of what you think it should be, is to let go of the life you think you should be living, who you think you should be, so that you can truly be open to the life that is seeking to emerge. I mean, how much more important than right now, to trust life, to trust the emerges, to trust what's happening, as many of our dreams and life hasn't kind of gone expected to plan in the last 2 years. We can resist it, we can fight it, we can feel like a victim, we can hold on to the life that we had, or we can open our arms and saying, okay, it is what it is happening. And how do I truly surrender to what's happening so that I can extract the learning, extract the wisdom, and grow and evolve and use this experience for the next level of my life, the next level of my growth. And so surrender is being open, it's allowing, it's being available, it's participating fully in the process of life as it's happening so that you can grow and evolve. And I think this time is where we are being tested and challenged to live that. And many people, many of us, we resist. We resist and we fight and we end up staying stuck and we end up suffering because part of the root of suffering is holding on. Part of the root of suffering is attachment. Part of the root of suffering is when we hold this belief in our mind, the experience that I'm having is not the experience that I should be having. I should be having some other experience than the experience I'm having right now. And in that moment is instant suffering. And when we can surrender and say, okay, the experience I'm having is the experience that I'm having. I may not like it, but it's the experience I'm having. And I must be having it for a reason, even if I can't see that reason right now. And to trust that reason and to learn the lessons where we are with who we're with in this moment. That is partly what surrender is really about. And I think that's when we get to experience the magic. Like magic is that which is beyond our mental ego's capacity to manifest and create. It's beyond our wildest dreams. And so we all want magic, but we don't want to surrender. We want the magic, but we want to hold on to the old. We want to hold on to what's not working. We want to hold on to that old relationship that we know is not working whilst waiting for a soulmate to show up. It doesn't work that way. The next level of our life requires the next level of us. And the next level of us requires that we let go, requires that we release and let go of that which is no longer in alignment so that we can make the space for the new. And that's why I think it's such an important theme. And to be honest, I believe surrender is the most powerful thing that we can do at this time, but also in any moment of our life, because life itself is a process, is a school in surrender. We can't escape surrendering. We're born, we live, we age. Aging, we can resist that process, but at age 20, age 30, age 40, age 50, age 60, age 70, age 80, hair starts falling out, the body changes. This is surrender. And so it's not about, am I going to surrender or am I not? It's more about, how am I going to participate in the process of life that is surrender? And so I think life tends to flow more fluidly and organically when we allow life to show us and lead us rather than trying to force it.
So amazing. As you're sharing, it reminds me of the quote that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Yes. Optional for sure. So in the book, you give obviously some very personal examples, some experiential things that you've dealt with in your life, some things that open your eyes to the power of letting go. And then you also share some examples and some experiences of other people as well. And I know that in one chapter, you share a story about Dave Chappelle and Jerry Seinfeld. It was during Coffee and Cars. I'm trying to remember the name of the show. It was a great show. And then you also share another story about Laird Hamilton. Why don't you just give us a snapshot of one or both of those stories and how they give us the example of the power of letting go?
Yeah, I just think with Laird Hamilton, just a simple example, to be honest, I forget everything I've wrote in the book, so forgive me if I butcher my own story. But with regards to Laird Hamilton, he's someone that I've been so just inspired by, because when I see him surfing and I watch him surfing, you can't control the ocean. This is what we try to do in life. Life is an ocean. Waves. You can't control the ocean. You can't sit there and visualize, I'm gonna have this wave and I'm gonna make it. You can't. The ocean does whatever it does, however it wants to move. It's unpredictable. This is life. Life is unpredictable and it does what it does, and shit happens, and betrayal and divorce and all of this stuff. It's just the ocean. And so we have to learn to surf in that. What most of us do is we try to like force the ocean, control the ocean, contain the ocean, and, you know, take a wave and make an ocean happen, make a wave happen. But when I see surfers, they're in this crazy, dangerous, unpredictable environment, and they're just flowing, you know, they're flowing. They're working with the ocean. They're working with life. They're in tune with the ocean. They're working in harmony with the ocean. They're not going against the ocean. Laird Hamilton is not, you know, sitting on the ocean and trying to make a wave happen and force a wave. He's feeling for the wave. I think that's part of life. Is life has a flow. If we really tune in, you start feeling that life has a natural flow and a natural, like, yeah, something, it feels like something's moving me here. Feels like something's moving me to America. Feels like something is moving me away from this thing. And if you really feel that, it's beyond your mind. It's the flow of life. And I think it's so important that we become still. Meditate, be still, to listen to this flow, to listen to this movement, to listen to this impulse of life, because it will guide us. And I think if you look at the great surfers like Laird Hamilton, they sit on the surfboard and they wait. They sit and they wait and they feel the ocean. And they feel not where they want the ocean to go. They feel, where is it moving? Where, oh, there's a wave coming. Okay, there's a wave. And then they catch that wave. And to me, this is life. This is like the process of life itself. And that's why, for me, someone like Laird Hamilton is such an inspiration. We have, in life, we can't control the ocean, but we have to learn how to surf it. And I think it's important that we also stop praying for the waves to get smaller and expand our capacity to surf bigger waves. This is growth and this is evolution. Life, we are souls. And I think part of the freedom is when we stop resisting what's happening. We stop resisting challenges. We stop resisting the nature of life. Life, we are souls. We incarnate into this human experience. Souls having a human experience. Life is a school for our souls' learning and growth and evolution. That's how I see it. And that, if life is a school, then every experience, every situation, every relationship, everything we go through is part of your soul's curriculum. It's a different classroom. And part of how we can surrender and surf, no matter what's happening, is when you start seeing yourself as a soul, everything as a lesson, every experience as a classroom, then no matter what the situation, you don't just focus on what's happening and the level of the story. You start focusing on, what is a lesson my soul is seeking to learn here? What is the lesson my soul is seeking to learn in this relationship? What is the lesson my soul is seeking to learn on this big wave? And so long as we learn that lesson, we can keep surfing. So long as we learn that lesson, we can keep growing and evolving. And I think that's part of the surrender, the surrendering in each moment to the lesson inherent in every situation, not just the story of they did this and he did that. Oh my God, can you believe? It's like, no, there's a reason I'm going through this. There's a reason I'm on this wave right now. There's a reason that I'm in this particular storm right now. And what am I seeking to learn? And I think when we shift our focus to the soul level, the soul line, not just the gold line, it transforms our relationship to life. Then we stop hoping for the ocean to get easier.
Yeah, instead of hoping it gets easier, let's work on getting better.
Yes, yes.
And you've brought up more than one time the word ego, and it resonates throughout your book as well. You give some very powerful examples of how ego gets in our way. And there are some that I've spoken with who talk about the power of ego from a positive perspective, almost using the dark side as a way to motivate, as a way to accomplish more. And there are others that, and I think of Ryan Holiday as an example, the author, talking about ego as the enemy. So speak to ego for a moment and share with us a few more pieces of information about your thoughts on ego.
I wrote a chapter on it, so I'll just kind of give a little nutshell. But to me, ego, first, when you understand the nature of ego, it transforms your relationship with ego. And many times the issue is not the issue, it's your relationship with the issue that's more the issue. And so I don't see ego as good or bad. Ego is not the enemy. The more you make ego the enemy, the more you empower the ego. Ego in and of itself is not a thing. Like, here is a phone. Here is a piece of paper. Here is a pen. And where is ego? Ego is not a thing. Ego, like a little pet that you hold. Like, show me ego. Ego is a process. Like, we have a bicycle. Bicycle is a thing. The cycling motion is a process. So ego is a process of identification with mind, body, name, form, feelings, past experiences, memories, trauma. And the degree to which we identify ourselves as that thing, that is ego. So it's not good or bad. Ego is just a vehicle that we can use in this physical human experience to navigate and drive through life. Dalai Lama has an ego. Sorry to bust anyone's myth. Dalai Lama has an ego. But how can Dalai Lama has an ego? He's egoless. No, if he was egoless, you would walk up to Dalai Lama and say, Dalai Lama, and he wouldn't move, he wouldn't respond. But when you go up to Dalai Lama and you say, hey, Dalai Lama, he turns around and says, yes. That is a level of ego. So ego is not the issue, it's your relationship with it. And the degree to which you are identified with yourself as this body, this name, this form, this mind, this structure, that's ego. So the problem is not ego. The problem is your attachment and identification to yourself as this thing. That's the problem. So as children, you look at a child doesn't really have ego. Baby, doesn't have ego. They just cry, they just shout, they just sing, they'll dance naked, and they don't care. Like, do I look good? Do I sound good? They don't know good, bad, right, wrong. They'll sing like however they sing until they're told. That's terrible. Don't do that. They don't care that they're not Bruno Mars or I got to be Adele. I got to be as good as. Now that's ego. That's a level of identification. So they're just free, being their pure, essential self and essence. That's what we all were. But in a quick nutshell, as children, what happens? We're born into an environment. We meet our parents. There's pain, there's trauma, there's dysfunction. Our parents are just doing the best that they can do based on their life and their childhood and their upbringing. So we learn, and maybe our parents were fighting all the time. There was pain, there was hurt, there was mental health issues, there was alcoholism. We learned to shut down, disconnect, and not feel. We learned to erect all sorts of defense mechanisms to not feel the pain. Then we got very attached to that way of defending ourselves as a way to never feel that pain again. And we held very tightly to this strategy of never feeling that pain again as a defense mechanism. The degree to which we're holding tightly to that way of being is ego. That's ego. Then we go through our entire life being the tough guy, the one that has no emotions or feelings, holding so tightly onto that way of being, or the arrogant one, so that I don't feel the pain again. It's all a strategy to never feel that pain again. And that's how we navigate life. Then we go through life. Who do I need to be in order to get love and validation and approval? We become nice, we become funny, we become, we develop roles, masks, and personas. Then we contort ourselves into that shape, avoid pain, get love. And we end up becoming this patterned, conditioned personality that we actually believe, because we've been reinforced through society, school, education, religion, parents, and friends, we actually believe that this is who I am. We actually believe that this is me. And the degree to which we believe that, because we've been conditioned and it's been reinforced, and the degree to which we're holding tightly onto that as a survival mechanism to get our needs met, that is ego. It's the holding on that is ego. So ego isn't the issue. So to move beyond it, we have to first realize that we are conditioned. We often aren't aware that we're conditioned. We have to first realize that we're conditioned. Then we have to have the compassion to realize why we were conditioned and have the compassion for ourselves in that conditioning. If we can have the compassion for ourselves in that conditioning, that compassion can help heal the grip of the ego, because the reason why surrender can seem scary for the ego, and the reason why we control, is the ego's job is to reinforce its existence. And how it reinforces its existence is control. Because if I'm controlling everything and managing everything, I'm never going to get hurt again. If I control and manage everything and assert myself, I exist. And so surrender is scary because it requires a letting go of that. And so, yeah, if we can have the compassion, like, of course it's scary. Of course, like, wow. Just even looking at ourselves and saying, thank you, ego. Thank you, mechanisms, defense mechanisms, for trying to protect me, being arrogant, trying to protect me, being, tough guy, trying to protect me, being too nice, I see what you're trying to do. And if we can meet ourselves with that loving and compassion, then healing happens. And that grip can start loosening in the process of also, as we begin questioning ourselves, is who I am, who I really am? Do I really believe that? We're often afraid to question our beliefs because we think those beliefs are who we are. But if we can begin questioning ourselves and then feeling the feelings underneath that we have suppressed, then the grip of ego starts to loosen and we start opening to another dimension of that essence that's always been there underneath those layers.
Incredible. So amazing. All of you that are watching and listening right now, listen, let this soak into your heart and into your soul, and go back and re-listen to this episode. There is so much information in this one. It is so powerful. Kute, before I ask my final question to you, please share with our audience where we can connect with you.
My website, www.kuteblackson.com. Depending on people listen to this, The Magic of Surrender came out on paperback May the 3rd. Check it out. It's available on Amazon. If you go to the website, I'm going to do something special. If you go to the website, www.kuteblackson.com/reinvent seminar, you get, and then you pre-order the book, the paperback version, enter your name, your email. You get a bunch of free gifts, but I'm also going to gift you access to a replay of the seminar that I did on May the 7th. The seminar is called Reinvent Life, How to Reinvent Yourself. I'm reachable on Instagram, Facebook, Kute Blackson. For those that want to go on a deep dive transformational journey twice a year, I take people to Bali, 12 days. It's life-changing. www.boundlessblissbali.com.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to provide all the links in the show notes. And here is my final question to you. So what are you either removing or adding to your life right now to live with more fulfillment and purpose?
Honestly, it's nothing big, but it's big in that when you write a book about surrender, the universe has a strange and interesting way of educating you about the content that you're writing and inviting you to surrender more. And so in a nutshell, this could be a whole nother interview, but in a nutshell, it's just greater degrees of letting go of control, greater degrees of living surrender in every area, to be honest, and embracing the unknown in every area more and more, while simultaneously moving forward. And so it's just another level of practicing surrender in my own life.
Beautiful. Thank you. Kute, you're just an amazing human being. Thank you so very much for sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom, bringing the magic of surrender to life, and allowing us the opportunity to learn through it and to learn from you. I am grateful for you. And for all of you, thank you so much for watching and listening. And please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We would love it if you would share a comment specifically about this episode with Kute, and we'll make sure we share those comments with him. And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Scherr Business Consulting can help your business build a solid foundation, all you need to do is visit jscherrbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, push yourself beyond your comfort zone, pick up a copy of The Magic of Surrender, and apply the lessons learned. And we will see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.
Scherr.
Scherr Business Consulting.
Scherr Business Consulting.